Good morning and welcome to Christian Lifestyles. Today I'm going to be talking about our final project, which is going to be centered on rest. As we've talked about before, the goal of this class is to give you some time to practice rhythms of prayer, of community, of solid work, of meaningful rest. And our last project is specifically centered on rest. And this is going to be the process of making an illuminated manuscript. And illuminated manuscripts are drawn books and often illustrated books. And for a long time within the history of Catholicism, books and paper were really hard to come by. And also that before the printing press, books were hand copied. And so copying a religious work or an important piece of literature became a prayerful process. And they would put illustrations in that would all be hand drawn. And so they would make these books works of art. And so we're going to be doing that in some way for this project. And as you can see here, we're going to spend a little bit of time looking at a modern example, which is St. John's Bible, which was made in the US using traditional materials, but done in a modern way. And as you can see here, there's the 7 days of creation and going into the book of Genesis. So our purpose in this project, which is going to take the rest of the class, is to really take some time to live out the charism or the mission of work and prayer and rest. We're going to be doing work because we're going to be creating art. We're going to be doing it in a meditative way, in a reflective way. And for those among you that pray, this will be an opportunity for prayer. And hopefully this will also be an opportunity for creative rest. And we've talked about in this class that the call to make the garden city in Genesis and ending in Revelation is this call to work in cooperation with God in order to create beautiful works, to draw the potential out of this beautiful creation. And I can't see a better way to do that than by making some art. And the last thing is that one of the things that we addressed somewhat in this class is the lifestyle of the Benedictines, of holy orders, not holy orders, the consecrated life. And that by practicing some time for intentional silence and reflection, you can have kind of a sacred awareness through an unhurried approach to what you're doing. And I can't see a better way to do this than by taking some time to intentionally produce some art. And so this project should take you about 2 hours in total. If you think about the time that we have left, we have an hour and 20 minutes on Thursday or Friday, and then you'd have the day of the final. So, as I said before, a modern example of this is the St. John's Bible. And as you can see here, this is the beginning of Ecclesiastes. And you can, if you remember from when we watched the video, the people at the Bible Project talked a lot about the smoke or the vapor or the hevel. And you can see that here going through creation. And you can see one of the things that the illustrators did with the St. John's Bible is they showed God working through these interesting interconnected circles. And you can see that it's difficult to see, and I think that's pretty ingenious in the way that Ecclesiastes works. So if we move on to Proverbs, as you can see here, in this book you have the lamps, and you can see these pictures representing God's grace. And there is the same smoke, but it's kind of becoming, it's a little bit softer. It's a little bit more understandable, and Proverbs provides rhythms, observations, wisdom that provide a sense of order and demonstrate a sense of order in life. And I love this one from Job. I love the abstract nature of it. One of the things that Job ends with is a sense of wonder and awe at the unanswered questions. And one of the things that I think about when I look at this introductory image is you have kind of like good and evil, but in a very like ununderstandable way. And I think that this is really reminiscent of Job. I think it's really cool. So the original ones were made from vellum, which was sheep or cow's hide. And so obviously making paper for most of history was incredibly expensive. In fact, the paper itself was often more valuable than the words written on the page. And so often old or unread books, if people weren't reading a book, they would often erase them and rewrite something that people would read on top. And it's actually kind of cool because we, in the same style of like if you write really hard, you can sometimes see what was written from what's below. And we can actually analyze different pieces of paper, and we can see sometimes that several books had been erased and rewritten on pages. That's how we have copies of a lot of original works from ancient and medieval times. And so in monasteries, illustrators or illuminators would spend a lot of time prayerfully illustrating and using calligraphy to copy and compose these texts. And so some of the significant features of illuminated manuscripts are definitely like the enlarged and decorated first letters. That's something that we're going to practice as a standard in this assignment. Another thing that it includes often is some border art. Now, with the St. John's Bible, you saw some really clever ways of doing that, and I'll show you some traditional ways as well. Also, as we saw in the St. John's Bible, there will also be symbolic images which really enhance or direct the reader, the viewer, to the text. So a medieval example, and the most famous, is the Book of Kells. And as you can see here, this is the intro to the Gospels. You have the 4 images of the various Gospel writers. You have an image of Jesus here, and I think you've got the Chi Rho here. And as you can see, they're very intricate. There's a lot going on in the details, and all of this was hand-drawn in the book. In the Book of Kells is a illuminated Bible. And so here you have some examples of the enlarged and decorated letters, and you want to try to approach this style in a way that seems fitting for you. See other examples here. You can do it in music. There's also border art, and it tends to be rhythmic, like vines are common, or interconnected infinity-esque symbols are really common. They're often very natural. You can use it in various ways. Some cool ones that I've seen, some people have done like their favorite bands all around the corners. One person wrote the notes of their favorite song along the corner. One person loves computers and codes, so they wrote 1s and 0s along the corner. You can do what you'd like for the border art. Here's another really solid example. And one of the things you're going to do in this project is you're going to include one biblical image that really makes sense for you. And I have a list of some biblical images here. And what I encourage you to do is really think about it and find one that seems to connect with your experience or where you're at right now or where you'd like to be in the near future. Now, a lot of people will just be like, oh, biblical symbol, like we got to put a cross on there. And I think the cross is incredibly meaningful, and to just go to it without thinking, it's very, I just don't like it at all. And so if you want to include the cross, which when we think about it, is God undergoing death and in order to give life. It's hope and life through suffering and sharing experience. It's that in order to have life and life to the full, you must die, and you must die to yourself and your first desires, things like this. It's insanely meaningful, and so don't just go to it because it's easy and you can turn a T into it. There are a lot of other ones we've got here. You can see them, and I'll have a more authoritative list as well. This is one that ends, I think, the Gospel of Matthew, and this is from the St. John's Bible. I think it's a really cool one to end on. I really like it. So just some tips as you're going through your process, and I'll tell you exactly what you need to include in a second, is that if you're going to do yours on regular paper, I encourage you to do a rough draft for spacing. That you don't want to do the John Mulaney like happy birthday thing where you go with the big H, the big A, and then you're like, oh no, I don't have enough space. And if you're doing it in large letters, what you need to do, it's going to be difficult. And so you want to make sure that your spacing is solid. This should not take a long time. If you're spending more than 20 minutes on your rough draft, you need to move to the final draft. This is not a Google Doc. You will not be able to just edit it to make it the final draft. You'll need to start again if you're doing it on paper, or go over it in a different, like in not pencil. Although you can do yours in pencil. So you can also, as I kind of showed already, you can put things in the borders or in the letters themselves, which are pretty cool. And yeah, many people have done this in the past. And so what you're going to need to have in your illuminated manuscript is a mantra. And I'll have here a list of the mantras that we looked at earlier on in the semester. You can choose one from those. You also maybe wrote your own that you appreciate from there. You can include those. And remember, a mantra is a repeated word, phrase, or sentence. It's a short prayer that you want to become a part of who you are. And and then you're also going to include a quotation, which would also be just a sentence by someone who's not you, and an informal reference. And by informal reference, I mean like the dash and then the name, or the dash and then the book. Very informal reference. And you're also going to include a charism. So like, what should you be about? Like, what is your mission? What is your goal right now? And this also could be quite short, probably about a sentence. And then I also want you to include your name, and include your name as part of the illuminated manuscript. And so for the mantra, the quotation, the charism, and for your name, you are going to need the enlarged and decorated letter. So you should have 4 of those in the whole thing. And you're also going to have a border, and it needs to go along at least 2 sides, but obviously the standard would be all 4 sides. And then within the illuminated manuscript, you're going to have at least 3 personal images, 3 images that are meaningful to you. And so if you are a Christian and you are inspired by the Bible, you could include a Bible. If you play basketball, you could include a basketball. If you Yeah. If you are engaged in politics, you can include a political symbol. If you love music, you can include the instrument that you play. There are a lot of different personal symbols you can include. You can do that. And then in addition, so for a fourth symbol, at least, you should include one biblical symbol or one biblical image. And those could be from this list, and then I have an authoritative, like longer list as well. And so once again, it's basically going to be 3 sentences, your name, including 4 images, one of which will be a biblical image, and then a border along at least 2 sides. So here's an example of one from a few years ago. She chose to do flowers along the side. She chose cupcakes. She actually did, she made cupcakes for the whole class as part of her cooking project. She chose a dove for her biblical image, and I don't know exactly what this is, but she chose this for another image, and the flowers counted as an image too. You can double use things. And you can see here the illuminated enlarged first letters. You would want to also do it to your name, but yeah, not all of these are like perfect in sense of the requirements. Here's another one. And you can see here the enlarged letters. You can see a pretty simple border. You can see the various images. And as we end, the goal here, I'm not judging you on how artistic you are. The goal here is to engage in the experience. We just finished the marriage project, and the goal there was similar, that the experience itself is the lesson. And so if you take 2 hours, even if you are not super artistically inclined, and I would be among those people, take 2 hours to bring the best that you've got. And that's what you should be doing in this project. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you later.